Members of the public for a few months now have been calling for a public net zero debate to be held at the council with expert views on both sides of the argument, because it is not done on mainstream media, and because of concerns, a lot of the net zero things that are put forward aren't at all good for the environment. And a lot of the strategies put forward do seem to be yet another way to tax people. And there are thousands of experts out there who disagree with a lot of what is put forward on the mainstream media. So now even more members of the public are coming forward requesting this meeting.
And welcome, thank you for coming along. Over to you.
Thank you all as well. My name is Wendy Smith. I'm a former Paralympic wheelchair basketball player, and I do consider myself quite an upstanding member of the community. Over the last few years, it's just come to my awareness that there are many things that are being railroaded through, not just from government, but locally as well. And I do actually have some concerns. One, from a disability point of view, for if we go over to certain things. I won't go into the climate change emergency now, because I'm sure you've all heard it to death, what everybody's thoughts are. But I do actually have some concerns for mobility and different aspects. But because of what has recently been coming up and with the changes that are wanting to be made, I was just wondering at what point, sort of now, are you guys going to decide to open these subjects up to public debate, or at least a public meeting? Because obviously you guys in here as well are part of the community, and you represent us as our sort of community leaders. And I do think that public opinion really should be listened to now on these subjects, rather than things just be pushed through. So at what point are you guys actually going to hold a public meeting, is what I want to actually know, based around the climate change emergency?
Great. Well, you're sat right next to the leader of the council there, who heads up the executive. The sentiment of what you've said, welcome. You're always welcome to come here and have your say. This is the scrutiny panel. I mean, we don't necessarily have the ability to facilitate and call that public meeting in this forum, but you're perfectly entitled to ask your own councillors, the council, to have these conversations. We don't shy away from them. We've had some really good discussions in this place around some of the concerns around the provenance of what's going into EV batteries. For example, I think that debate is an ongoing one that we're all alive to, and I certainly welcome that conversation as someone who drives both a diesel car and an electric bicycle. So your comments are noted. Thank you for coming along, and let's keep the discussion going.
So where would I get an answer to that? Will there be a public meeting based around this?
I think your best place to come to probably the environment panel, or ask the leader if there is a way of facilitating that. But I'm certainly not here. I don't have the ability to say, yes, you can have the town hall and have that discussion.
Oh, okay.
If you see what I mean. I think you take this moment offline with the leader of the council and see where he thinks is appropriate to try and facilitate something for you. Okay, I'm next going to call up Terry Charles, please. Terry.
I've been watching the council over the past few months and the public engagement. However, what I am yet to see is the council really responding to the public. What I've seen so far, it's not happened. The people seem to be asking reasonable questions which the council themselves, in my opinion, should also be asking. Now that the public are asking for a public meeting to explore some of these issues, which I am increasingly interested in, unfortunately, I don't see the council working towards achieving that either. Surely it is in the public interest and the council's interest. Therefore, I have to ask a question: what problem does the council have with providing a public meeting? Now, I do a lot of community work, and I speak to a lot of members of the public, and there's a lot of disillusioned, disappointed people. It's about time, in my opinion, that the council start to listen to the people. I'm here speaking on my behalf, but also on people outside as well. So my question is, again, the same thing. When are the council going to hold a public meeting with not 20 or 30 people, but put another nought on the end of that? Because it needs to be done. The people are asking for the council to actually start representing them, and they can start by actually listening to the people and holding that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I mean, you've heard my answer earlier. You're sat next to the leader of the council there. We're the scrutiny panel. We have a strict agenda of what we're looking at tonight. I will ask the leader for you if he will have a conversation with you. I'm sure he would be delighted to facilitate a wider conversation. Leader.
I'm not sure if we have other speakers on the same subject, so I was going to wait till the end, if I might, and then offer a few remarks.
Let's do that. Let's call up Brian, please.
Okay, good evening. This is going to be short and sweet as well. In the last few months, we've heard questions being asked, facts being aired, and little in the way of constructive responses. Surely it is time for the public to know who at the council is resisting transparency. At the last full council meeting, there was a unanimous show of hands in support of transparency. Surely we must now have a full vote in the council to see who is it that does not support a public meeting. Should this not be put as a motion onto the next full council meeting?
You've been heard. Okay, so we've taken 3 members of the public's calls for a public meeting to discuss some of the narrative around the environmental concerns that are out there. I'm going to welcome the leader of the council to respond to the requests for a public meeting.
First of all, thank you. And every member of the council here knows what it's like to come and sit. It can feel quite uncomfortable here. I'm not saying you are, we don't want you to be, but we know that it can be. So I want to say to all 3 of you, to Wendy and who's my second speaker, Terry, I want to thank the 3 of you on behalf of fellow members, first of all. That's the first thing. The chair has said what we have to say, which is we have a formal process for very good reasons. That formal process ensures we cover the breadth and depth of what the council has a responsibility for or what it has an opinion on, which includes absolutely issues around environment and climate, of which there have been at different times some very intense discussions, both in full council and in what we call panels. So when a smaller group of us like this gather, and we'll spend far too many hours, like you tonight, walking through the detail and testing the expert opinion and the balance of argument. That's the way we're structured, that's the way we have to work. But it's also true that we look for other opportunities to engage. And I will just sort of say this to you, that when we talk about the depth of public opinion, members here will have their own sense of this from their constituents. But that doesn't exclude the passion, the feeling, and the desire to know more from some. And so the 3 of you have provided us a challenge, how to fit your wish to have a conversation, a discussion, into our framework. We can do that in the way that the chair described earlier. We can have a look at the business that we address. And so I think the thing I've got to take away and have a conversation with you and others is exactly how you would frame the question and the challenge for us, and then we can have a look at how we might best serve that. The only conversations we'd have, I think, in a public place would have to be ones which have some balance to them and have some what we would like to think is expert opinion, but that's a conversation we can walk through. So that's why I would say, if I could, Chair, and to our visitors tonight, and I'm happy to sort of walk away for a few minutes, if you'll excuse me, to have that conversation in a little bit more depth in private.
To make you relatively happy this evening. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll call Lance and I will relieve the leader to go and have a quick offline conversation about how we might facilitate that public meeting. It's a pity that we don't have access to the Moot Hall at the moment, because that would have been an obvious gift that the leader might have suggested, but we can't get up there at the moment. Lance, good evening, sir.
This is just a quick one. Obviously, around about 4 months ago, I was here last, and I was bringing to the attention some issues I had with lawfulness of the searches. I haven't had any reply, so unfortunately, it's now with the fellow who's just buggered off. So just to sort of say, I really do need the replies to the questions that I was raising. And then lastly, just to say also that this lady behind me, she still hasn't had any reply to the assault that was conducted upon her. I think that would be appreciated. And then lastly, last month, the security on the door for the full council meeting, they informed me on the way in that they'd been reassured by the council that searches were lawful. That's fine, I've got no problem with that, because what that means is there must be an opinion within council and I'll draw your attention to, I think it was Councillor Dundas in the last full council meeting, made a very correct point, which, you know, there was some very correct things said that night. I was quite pleased to hear some of them. He said the council won't think. It's all the, you know, the ownership of the people and you know, yourselves included. So that opinion is not something that should be closely held. So I'd very much like to see that legal opinion, because I still believe, until proven otherwise, that I'm right, councillor wrong. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, Lance, thanks for coming along, for putting on record that you haven't had a satisfactory or any response yet. So I will personally take that up with the leader offline after tonight.
So whilst Lance was having his say, the previous three speakers, Brian, Terry and Wendy, were having a chat with Councillor King. Now, I wasn't at this meeting, but the leader of the council, from all reports, was very open to the idea. He was interested in hearing the other side of the debate, because people never do hear that side, and he has agreed to it in principle. Now, that's not a yes, that's agreed to it in principle. There's still a lot of boxes to tick. Finding a venue is tricky because, as Councillor Laws said, the Moot Hall unfortunately is out of action. So we've got to supply them with a speaker list, which we'll do so in due course. They need to discuss it over amongst themselves and choose a venue. So, as I say, although we're not there yet, it is very positive that at least the leader of the council is open to hearing all sides of the debate. And that is the main focus of this, to make sure that the council are making evidence-based, fact-based decisions, not fear-based ones on fear-mongering from mainstream media. We want the actual facts. So whatever we do for the environment has to be good for the environment. And I'd also like to thank Councillor King for his time. I think he spoke with them for about half an hour. And, you know, he was under a lot of pressure that evening because he was the one coming under scrutiny that night. So it was very good of him to meet with the public, listen to their concerns and agree in principle. So we thank him very much for that. Now, that scrutiny meeting turned out to be 4 hours long, so at some point we'll give you some more highlights, but we just wanted to share that really positive news that the council are listening and they are willing to listen further. So until next time, take care. Bye-bye.